Jeff Howe at Horns 247, at 247 Sports, at Longhorn_Blitz. The Horn in Austin joins us on 365 Sports on UT. Jeff, I hope this is fair to say that we know that no matter what they've come off of or who, Texas is going to have some off-season adrenaline and hype. Is this the first time in a while, or not a while, but is this the first time in which there's some meat on the bones? They deserve it?
I don't know what hype you're talking about, Smokey. That never happens in Austin.
Well, they're expected to win 3 to 5 games this year. That's hype. They're expected to go 3 and 4 and 8, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's for lack of a better term off the top of my head, a level of comfort, I think, internally. Craig Way and I, we actually had Sark on our show today, and I like at these certain markers, whether it's after the season, spring ball, going into camp, wherever. I just go back to when he was hired. He talked about being a great development program. And there's a lot of tentacles that reach out from the aspect of player development, that kind of abstract idea. And Texas has been really bad in that area for probably – the last, I don't know, what are we at now, like 12, 13 years, just really underwhelming. And, to hear Stark talk about it, he really likes where they are. I mean, he's even said he really feels like this is his team. These are his guys. And, there's some, you can see the guys that they've recruited, especially in that 2022 class, guys are getting better. They're improving. You'll see a lot of those guys this weekend. You'll see some of the guys in that 23 class that they're going to be counting on this year. But I think there's a good mix of young talent and veterans now that have been developed, that have been in this system for 3 years, that have been in this organization for 3 years. And you're starting to see, you're seeing it with your eyes, what little we've gotten to see, and you're hearing about it. I mean, whether it's David Benda or Keaton Crawford, go on down the list of various guys, Tavondre Sweat, guys that have been in this program for a while, that this staff is seeing the best versions of those guys. That's how you know you're getting somewhere. So for me, I know at times it can be kind of hard to see the forest in the trees. That's why I'm excited about this team. It's just that you're starting to see those signs of real legitimate player development that hasn't been tangible around this place in a really long time on any kind of a consistent level.
Do you think that leads to also chemistry? Because part of it was player development, but, especially under Tom Herman, they never seemed to find that, that they never gelled all the way together all at once. And it seemed like maybe a little bit, especially last year with some of the leaders they had on that team, started to poke their head out of the sand of oh, yeah, we're all on the same page here.
It's interesting, Paul. I do believe that teams take on the personality of their coach. And, let's just go back to Tom Herman for a second, right? I think in a lot of respect, everybody in that organization felt after the Sugar Bowl win over Georgia, whether it was warranted or not, a lot of people inside the building felt that they had arrived. And, they really hadn't. And I think in a lot of aspects, I think that staff, and this is coming from guys who were on that staff, I think that staff in a lot of respects just kind of expected things to happen. I think when you look at Sark, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's a guy that has a vision for where he wants the program to go. A guy that understands, you work for Nick Saban and Pete Carroll, you work for national championship coaches, you understand what it takes to see that vision through. He's got the resources now to help him apply that vision. And I think he's got, to your point, Paul, about leadership, I think he's got guys that understand now what it takes to get there. It wouldn't have been hard for their leadership to improve from 2021, where they had little to none, to where they got last year. And yeah, they're in that area. They're going to miss Roschon Johnson a lot. But I think you've now got other guys, whether it's Jalen Ford on defense, you can go over to offense, and a guy like Jake Majors that's been in the program a while, a guy like Jatavian Sanders, Jordan Whittington. You've got enough guys on this roster that has seen the right way to do it, and they've seen the wrong way to do it. And I think part of that leadership is, look, we like the results. We like the end result when it's done the right way, as opposed to doing it the wrong way. So I just think you've got a lot of guys that understand what it takes to win. They feel like they're close. And whereas we've seen some Texas teams, some regimes, even late Mac Brown years where it felt like they were close, some people just expected it to happen. You really get the sense that this group is putting the work in to make it happen, and that they're starting to. I'm not saying there is already, but they're starting to really be that defined standard of, hey, when you walk in the building every day, this is what is acceptable, and anything that doesn't meet that standard is not acceptable.
What is the talk surrounding Quinn Ewers with a full year under his belt, and obviously just the rest of that room? One guy in particular, and Arch Manning, has been on campus. Just we know that it's Ewers as the guy, but what have been the early returns on Arch and what Ewers has done up to this point?
And thank you, Craig, for driving that home. You have no idea how much I greatly appreciate the clarity you had on that. No, I think the big change with Quinn is confidence. I think in a lot of respects, and he even said this, and I was kind of taken aback at the Alamo Bowl when he said it. He thought after, they beat Oklahoma, because you got to remember his two big games at that point were the Alabama game where he was just awesome for that quarter and change that he was out there, and then the Oklahoma game where, except for one bad throw, as lights out as you can be, he felt like he had really made it at that point. And I think realized pretty quick there's a lot more to playing quarterback at this level and doing it at a consistently high level than just having a couple of good games. And he's put in a lot of work on his own. I think there was a lot of maybe needing to go back and doing some of the fundamental stuff this spring that he didn't have time to clean up last fall. I think that's a big part of it. When you think about his development track, you got to remember, everybody talks about, he had the year at Ohio State where he didn't play, but you go back to his junior year at South Lake Carroll, that wonky COVID year where everything got pushed back, the shutdown really, that hampers a quarterback's trajectory where you really need all the hands-on training. And then you get into the season, and he has a sports hernia surgery. So basically from Halloween until right before Christmas, he's on the shelf. So Quinn Ewers, for the better part of 2 years, missed a lot of development time on the field. So you can look at it and say, man, if you look at it like that, it's kind of remarkable what he put together. But he knew where he needed to work, and he's been willing to put the work in. We kind of joked with Sark when spring ball started, and Sark said, he's like, I don't know, he trims his beard, he cuts his mullet, and then everybody thinks Quinn suddenly is taking this thing serious. He's taking it serious. It's just maybe a little more maturity on his part. I think other than not so much Arch, I think the big surprise this spring has been Malik Murphy, just because he's been healthy. I know, big, strong-arm kid out of California that Sark likes a lot. And, I even asked him about that today, and there are non-negotiables that he and AJ Milwee expect from their quarterbacks, but with respect to where those guys are at different stages of development, with Quinn having the full year under his belt, Malik finally being healthy with a year to kind of sit and watch, and then Arch being a newcomer, he likes the path that all three of those guys are on. Everything we've heard about Arch since he got in the building was football IQ is really high, the work ethic is good, blends in well with his teammates. From a body type standpoint, I think when you see him in pads up close in person, bigger than you would think he is. And the natural talent, the innate things that it takes to play quarterback are all there. How much will you see it on Saturday in spring game? I don't know, but when Sark says that, he really means it, and talking to people in the building, you really get the sense of they have three quarterbacks right now that they feel really good about, and that's really hard to find in the transfer portal area.
And is that going to stay that way because of the pecking order? Ewers perhaps leaves after this year if it goes well. Then there's Arch or Malik, and that's gonna, because that's the position group that is the most wanted, of course, in the transfer portal.
I think so, Smokey. That would be my gut feeling, just based on where things are right now. It's going to be a really pivotal summer for all three of those guys, but I think especially for Arch and Malik. When you look at, hey, if something were to happen to Quinn, and I pointed out, Sark has had 2 seasons doing this thing at Texas, and each of those 2 years he's had to go to the backup quarterback by game 3, excuse me. So, the backup quarterback needs to be prepared to play. Where this race is, I would say if they went and played a game today, Malik Murphy would be the first guy in. But depending on what they do during the summer, we could get to August, and that could be Arch Manning's job, no question, no doubt about it. And then at that point, you're thinking, okay, if you're Malik Murphy, do you go ahead and transfer now? Do you just probably what most quarterbacks do, just kind of wait out the season, and then as soon as the end of the semester ends, you go ahead and hit the portal. Whatever the case is, I think there's Malik Murphy has every reason right now, to your point, Smokey, to stick it out, see this thing through, put in his work during the summer, and then get through those camp scrimmages and then kind of see where he's at.
Jeff, it's reported, or there's reports out there about some potential transfers or guys entering the portal. I don't know how official any of that is or not, but Derek Brown and Travell Johnson at linebacker, also wide receiver Brennan Thompson, who I know is also a track guy. Any particular surprise or insight or light to shed on those three guys?
No, because I think all anybody would need to do would be to go out to a practice.
Okay.
And Brennan Thompson's been at the track with the track team this spring, and you get to look at Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore and A.D. Mitchell, the Georgia transfer, and you're thinking, man, they've got some really good receivers that are going to be here for a minute. And Ryan Niblett, their other 4-star side, he's not even on campus yet. And you go to linebacker. I mentioned David Benda earlier. He and Jalen Ford have been running with the ones, but Anthony Hill's been really good. Leonga Lafau has had a really good spring from everything we've heard. So Mo Blackwell's still in that mix. So it's going to be really hard for anybody outside of those guys to find the rest of the linebackers. So I think this is the point where guys kind of see the writing on the wall and decide to transfer out. It's not necessarily any of those guys are bad players or can't produce somewhere else, but this is the good kind of attrition you want to have. Again, this is where you feel like you're getting somewhere where you've got good players leaving, and in a lot of respects, and this is no knock on those guys, it barely registers. You're losing some guys that by all accounts are good people. They're good guys to have in the locker room. Their teammates like them, but guys see and say, look, if I want to play, I've got to get my chance here. I've got to get through 4 or 5 guys, and just go somewhere else and maybe get a fresh start. So now, none of those moves really surprised me, and I think you'll see a couple more. Everybody's dealing with attrition in the portal era, but again, this is, if you're a Texas fan, this is the good kind of attrition. This is the kind of attrition you want to have because, like I said, some of those 23 guys I mentioned, I haven't seen Texas newcomers, Texas young guys look like those guys, move like those guys in a really long time.
And that's even with them getting usually very high-level recruits. So you're talking about physical size?
Yeah, the whole package, Smoke. I mean, you watch Jonte Cook. He's got a subtle burst that you just can't coach. He's got some of the strongest hands I've seen. I mean, the only guy I can compare him to from a hand standpoint, I know you remember, so I know you guys remember him. Kendall Sanders, when he came out of Athens, just had some of the freakiest hands I'd ever seen. And, it's a shame that we didn't get to see Kendall's career play out. He finished at Arkansas State. But I would put Jonte Cook's hands up against Kendall Sanders as the best I've seen come through Texas. Colin Johnson, Kendall Sanders, Jonte Cook, I would probably put those 3 guys in that group. Anthony Hill, just from a size-speed combination, he and Leonga Lafau both. Texas has had a problem, and when you have so many schematic changes on defense, it compounds the issue. They've had a real problem recruiting off-ball linebackers, but they feel like not only did they get it right, they feel like they hit 2 grand slams with Lafau and Anthony Hill in this class. So I think it's safe to say from what the eye test tells you and from what we've heard internally, they're getting the caliber of guys that they felt like they were going to get when they recruited them. And like you said, Smokey, that at Texas, that hasn't always been the case, but they feel like their evaluations have been on point, and they've got guys that are willing to put in the work that they feel like they can develop over the long haul.
A couple of people, and I don't know how accessible things are, but scrimmage, whatever, but a couple on the chat room saying that they do look like there are larger human beings than they've had, and that perhaps might be that influence of coaching in the SEC. Not that when he was at Alabama under Saban, but not that everybody doesn't want that, but there you go with that from Sandra Green in the chat room.
Yeah, I'll expand on that just quick, Smokey. I talked to Sark about that last summer because he and Kyle Flood like talking about they want big humans, and nobody asked Sark until I did. I said, why do you have that philosophy? And he said it goes back to when he was in the NFL. When he was the OC with the Falcons. The Falcons had, and still I think do, have the smallest offensive line in the NFL. And he said, when they would go against the Patriots or the Ravens or the Eagles, they would just get bullied up front just because they had bigger, better personnel. And he told himself, if I ever get a chance to be a head coach again, I'm not going to walk into a stadium and get bullied just because I don't have bigger personnel. So that's what that's rooted in his NFL experience. And man, you've got to go back to like Lionel Garr, Mike Williams, Leonard Davis, Will Winston type guys to find the last time Texas had offensive linemen that looked like this getting off the bus.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Great stuff as always. Always like it to get Jeff on the show to talk UT. Very much the insight, knowledge, and a lot of storytelling along the way with UT as they head towards their spring game coming up this Saturday. When we come back, he's the head coach for